Welcome to Empowered. This episode, we hear from Tina Busenitz, the Director of Retreats and Strategic Hiring for World Impact. She shares her experiences with running events like the World Impact Women's Retreats, from the early planning stages to debriefing after the event and to everything in between. She discusses tools that have helped her with new event prep, as well as ideas that didn't work, in hopes that you can learn from her mistakes. Tina mentions several online tools that she's used in her event planning. Although we are not affiliated with any of these resources, we'll include the links to them in the description so you can check them out if you would like.
Hi, my name is Tina Busenitz, and I oversee all of World Impact's urban leadership retreats for both men and women. And I currently serve as the director of our women's retreat for Wichita, Kansas, which I've really enjoyed doing. And so for these past few years, I've actually had a lot of experience in project management. And I've learned some things that I want to share with you that will hopefully help you make your event, whether it be a retreat or a conference, a success, and hopefully help you not get burned out from planning one of these events, because they are a lot of time and effort. So the first thing that I've learned is that team is so important. You need a team. It can seem easier to just do things alone and by yourself, but really you need to surround yourself with people who have different gifts and skills than you do. Also people who are just as impassioned and excited about whatever event you're doing. And so, for example, I am more of a visionary thinker. I'm strategic, I have leadership gifts, but I'm not the greatest admin person. I don't know all about Excel. I'm not the best at all the details. And so I made sure that when we started our team for Wichita Retreats, I had people on my team with those type of gifts. And that's been really helpful for me. Another thing that you need to think about is the size of your team. Now, it's going to seem like more is better. So the more people you have on a team, the more help you're going to have all the representation you need. But I want to caution you, having too large of a team can actually be difficult. So just to give you a bit of our background, when we first started out about 8 years ago, we had a team of 10 women planning our Wichita retreat. And while it was great to have so many women excited about planning, it was actually very difficult logistically to get us all in the same room. And then there were so many different opinions, we had a hard time coming to consensus. So for the past 3 years, we have limited our team to about 5 women. And these 5 women represent 3 different urban churches here in Wichita. And that's great because those are the people we are trying to have come to our retreat, are people from our urban churches in the Wichita area. So another good thing to remember when you're establishing your team is, okay, what community are we representing? How do we want to make sure these communities have a voice? Make sure that some of your team members actually represent some of those different groups. When you think about the event you're planning, whether it be a retreat or a conference, there's 6 main components you probably want to start thinking about in your first meeting. And I'll read those real quick and then go back and summarize each one. It's theme, budget, venue, content, staff or volunteers, and registration. So the first one is theme, and that's really key. What do you want the focus of your event to be? And more importantly, when people leave your event, what do you want them to walk away with? What do you want them to remember and then tell other people about? For example, with our leadership retreats for World Impact, our theme for all of 2019 is Stronger Together. So when our local team went about planning this year's retreat, we thought through everything in light of the theme. Our worship songs, the teaching, even our craft reflected the theme, the t-shirts we wear, because we want people to remember what the event was about. The second one is budget, and this is huge. Your budget will actually shape all the different things you have in your retreat. And so it's really important that kind of toward the beginning of planning, you think about how much money is this going to cost? How much money do we have? How much do we need to raise? And more importantly, are we going to charge people a fee or do we want to cover all of it? And so that's one of the first things you need to think about as you go through your planning. The third one is venue. Okay, so now that we know what we're going to do, where do we want to have it? How does what we are doing affect where we want to have it? So for our retreats, we want to do it at a place that's kind of outside the city where there's fewer distractions. So we use campsites for a lot of our retreats. It's not a need to, you don't have to have one there, but that's what our team decided we wanted. So your team will have to decide, where do we want this event to be held? The the fourth one is content. What do you want to have happen at your event, and how do you make that happen? So is it primarily focused on teaching, fellowship, worship, prayer? Do you want to have a little bit of everything? Do you want to include food? How many meals? What about lodging? Are you going to spend one night or 2 nights, or is this going to be a day event? If you want to do other special activities, you have to have people that will lead those activities. And so as you think through all of the activities, it's helpful to start developing a very detailed schedule. Now, you'll have a simple schedule, which is basically the bones of your retreat, like when the meal times are, when the sessions or teachings are, etc. But for your planning team, I have found it very helpful to have what we call a minute by minute. So this is like a 3 to 4 page document with everything from the time you check into the event all the way to the time you leave. And the helpful thing about this is that when you look at your schedule and you go hour by hour, it actually helps you think through everything. So for example, you have a teaching starting at 10 o'clock. Well, who's going to announce the teacher or presenter? All right, okay, so we want communion in our service. Well, who's going to get the bread and the juice? So you have all these little things written in there that help you basically know how much planning this event's going to take. So that's been really helpful for us. The other thing that our team has used is something called Smartsheet. Now, this is an online planning tool. It does cost money, but this really helps us with our agendas. We can attach documents to it. It allows us to also keep track of our budget. Now, if you don't have the money for this, that's okay. Simply using an Excel spreadsheet can help you do this. It can track your budget, your costs, your activities, even the responsibilities of each team member. And maybe you're thinking, I don't even know Excel. That's okay. Get a Word document and make a to-do list. And the thing that we have found most helpful is if you have those big things, like what we've been talking about, budget, venue, content, and then you break it down so that there are action steps under each main heading. And this helps you have a to-do list because, come on, we all love to check off the little box and say we did something. And so I really recommend having a system that your team chooses to keep track. So for example, if venue was one of your things on your sheet, then you'd have action steps like research nearby camps, make a decision, and then officially reserve the venue. And then you can go back through and you can see that you've done all the steps necessary. This is also helpful when you develop your agenda for each meeting. So in order to make the most time of your meetings, it's good to think through before the meeting starts, what do we want to talk about? And to list these things in order of priority. So for example, if it's January and you have an event in May, you might want to talk about things like who are you going to have teach or lead because you need to reserve those people in advance. But maybe who leads communion at the service, you can wait till a month beforehand. So you have to prioritize the bigger things and get those decisions made first. This leads me to the fifth thing, which is staff or volunteers. Anytime you put on an event, you need people to help do all the things that are going to take place. You need teachers or worship leaders. You need behind the scenes people who will help with check-in or setup or cleanup. So go through a whole list of people that you need and start asking people for availability. And you might need to pay some people. So that's also a good idea to check in your budget and say, do we have money for an honorarium for certain special speakers? The sixth one is registration. And this one we have actually learned a lot about how to do more effectively. So when we first started our retreats, we had about 30 to 40 women. So we did it kind of the old-fashioned way. We would contact church leaders and say, okay, you need to collect your money for your people and then give it to us. So at the day of the retreat, we're collecting envelopes and loose cash and checks. And we have this sheet where we're checking off names, who's paid and who's hasn't. And as our retreat grew, this became very time-consuming and very tedious. So what we decided to do was research online registration sites, and we found Eventbrite. And this has been a really useful tool for us. It allows us to customize our registration. Now, you don't have to pay anything up front, but it will take a little bit off the top of your sales. But it's well worth it because this way people can register and pay, and you can customize registration. So if you need to know t-shirt size or email address or anything like that, they fill that out and then you get the information. And the great thing is with all that information on there, you can actually export it to an Excel sheet and do all kinds of things with it. So it's been really helpful for us. And that way it makes sure we get all of our money, which is key when you really need money to do your event. So that's been really helpful for us. So those are my 6 main components, but there are a few other tips that I've learned along the way that I'd love to share with you. So the first one is social media. Now I know people have a love-hate relationship with it, but the reality is for the community of women I serve, they love Facebook and Instagram. So I am learning how to post more effectively and efficiently. And our marketing team with World Impact has been a huge help for that. They have given me some insight on how to do this better. And so it has been really useful for us because we do reminders on there for the event. We do our link for our registration site we post on there. And also throughout the year, just to continue to engage women, we like to post encouraging stories or quotes or scripture verses. And I'm not the most creative person, so I've had kind of a hard time figuring out what should it look like to get people to stop, click, and read it. So our marketing team made me aware of this app called Retype, and that's Retype. And it just costs a few bucks, but it's worth it because what it does, it allows you to pick a background, it has a font, and you just type in whatever you want to say, and it makes it all nice and pretty, and you save it, and then you can post it. So things like this may seem little and insignificant, but if it keeps people coming to your page and makes them aware of the event you're planning, it's well worth it. The next thing I want to talk to you about is fundraising, because maybe you're like me and you realize that you're really going to have to push fundraising in order to afford to do the event you want to do. And so I want to talk about 2 fundraisers that have been so helpful for us that don't take that much time in planning. The first one is really simple. It's an Amazon wish list. Now, if you're familiar with Amazon, you may have your own personal wish list. I know for me, I have all these books on there that I'm going to read someday. Well, you can actually use the wish list as a public thing and put it on social media. And that way, people who are interested in supporting your event can buy the needed items that you would need. So for example, for our retreat, we like to provide a craft for the ladies. We also like them to have a goodie bag with a bottle of water, some chocolate, a pen. So we make a wish list with all those items. So if somebody wants to support our retreat, but they don't have a lot of money, they can go on and they can purchase a pack of pens or chapstick. And you know what? We, for the last 2 years, have gotten every single item purchased off of those lists. And it has saved us hundreds of dollars. And so this is an easy thing that only takes about 20 minutes to set up. You post it, you have people on your team share it, and you can get a lot of your supplies bought. The second thing that we have done is we have partnered with our Urban Church Association, and they have helped us in fundraising. So whatever community you're a part of, if you know a couple of churches or groups that are interested also in the event you're doing, you might think about partnering with them for an event. So every year in the spring, we do a chili cook-off fundraiser. So we have our urban churches volunteer, people make their chili, they judge it, we have a competition, we have raffle prizes of things people donate, we sell bowls of chili. It's just a great time for people to come out and support our women's retreat. And we get a lot of the stuff donated. So honestly, the costs for us aren't that much. And this past year, I believe we made over $2,000. And so this is just a huge help to us. In fact, in the fall, we do the same type of fundraiser, but for our men's retreat. So then all of us women come out to support the men. So we have made this an annual tradition. So in thinking about the event you want to do, maybe there's a way you can gather some different groups that are going to be a part of it and do a big fundraiser. Another thing that's really important that people often don't think about is that once your event is finished and you did it, it's a success, you need to celebrate. People don't talk about this, but good project management ends with 2 things, a debrief and a celebration. And I like to combine those. It's just a good way to say good job to your team. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can go out to ice cream, go out for a meal, celebrate what God has done in the event. I also like to take that time to just ask our team in a relaxed, laid-back environment, okay, what went well? What did we love? What tanked? What are we never going to do again? And we laugh and we talk, but we take notes because the best time to do this is honestly within a couple of weeks after your event finishes, when everything is real fresh in your mind and you haven't forgotten it. So you can take notes about what you want to do differently. And a little bit of a note on that, it's okay if it doesn't go real smoothly your first time or your second time, or in my case, you still have hiccups at your 8th time. That's all right. Mistakes happen. In fact, perfection is the enemy of progress. If you try to make every detail perfect, you're never going to move forward. You just have to, as my husband likes to say, fail forward, keep going, try new things. Maybe it didn't work out this time. You take notes and you do something different next time. But it's okay. Keep going forward. And the reality is the people coming to your event are going to be way less critical of it than you are and your team. So just remember that. If you have some hiccups, if all of a sudden your projector stops working, or it snows in the middle of your retreat, or it rains, it's okay. God is in the midst of it. It's going to be all right. And just so you know, a few of the mistakes we've made along the way, things we've learned, and I'll share this with you in hopes that maybe you'll learn. The first thing I remember in our early years of having teachers teach, I would just sort of, ask somebody I knew and give them some general guidelines and just let them go. And the thing about that is that sometimes then when they're presenting in front of your whole group, they're saying things that you don't really want them to say, or it's not really in line with your theme. And maybe it's a little bit off topic and maybe discouraging. And so you learn from that, and you trust that God will hopefully let people hear what they needed to hear and forget the rest. But that happened in my early years. And so guess what I do now? We pick teachers that we know have great gifts of teaching, but then I make sure I sit down with them and I tell them my expectations, because a lot of teachers aren't necessarily knowing what exactly you are wanting them to talk about or how to talk about it. So I give them an outline, I explain to them what our group is about and kind of what I'm looking for and what they're going to be talking about. So I've learned that. The second one I've learned is that when you're housing 160 women on a campsite, it's really good to ask ahead of time if anybody has a hip problem or a knee problem or just some physical limitations that might prevent them from really enjoying the retreat. So now at our registration, we have customized it so they can put, I can't do stairs, or I prefer not to be on a top bunk. And this helps everybody. So there's no embarrassing situations where someone comes and says, I can't sleep there, or I don't know what to do. I can't walk up to my lodging. Now we know these things ahead of time. It doesn't prevent us from never having those things that surprise us, but we are at least better equipped to handle that, because honestly, we want to make everyone feel comfortable and loved at our events. So those are things that I have learned, and I could go into a lot more detail, but I won't. And then probably the most important thing that I hope is probably clear is to pray, 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 pray. Spiritual warfare is real. And if your event is really empowering, equipping workers for the kingdom, you know the evil one is going to want to attack. And what we do here in our ministry, we know that's a reality. And so the last few years, I have really learned the importance of prayer. And so we have prayer warriors who are praying for our retreats. About 2 weeks prior to it, I print off a list of all the first names of the women attending, and I give it to our team to pray over. I give it to a couple of our other staff to pray over. We go up a day early to our campsite. We pray over the lodging. We just pray over everything because we know what God will be doing is powerful, and we just want to make sure that we've coated everything in prayer. So in closing, I know this has been a ton of information, but if you only remember 3 things, remember this: team, tools, and take it to God in prayer. Team, surround yourself with a small group of people who share your vision and passion and who have different gifts that will help support your event. Tools, familiarize yourself with tools that make planning easier and make your job easier. And third, take it to God in prayer. I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to comment about anything that you found very helpful. We would love to hear from you. So thanks.
Thank you again for joining us. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Reach out on social media with questions or topic suggestions. That's World Impact Inc. on both Twitter and Facebook, and World Impact on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. And as always, you can email us at empowered@worldimpact.org.